Hello everybody and welcome to Premiere 202, Premiere Pro for the filmmaker. We are on class 4 and we're discussing audio this week. And last week we talked a lot about interview techniques and how to construct your interview and really tell a good story through your interview. But this week I really want to cover how to make your audio sound the best. And yes, you don't always have control over your audio if you're just editing a project. But if you are shooting it, we talked about some of those techniques last week. But if you're just editing it, this week we're going to kind of get into some of the ways that you can make it sound better or just work around that audio using some different techniques. And to start out, we're going to talk a little bit about audio channels. And audio channels in Premiere is pretty interesting. For example, I have this clip. This is just one of the first records. I'm just recording some basic sound, ambient noise, things that are going on. I'm not sure if I'm going to use this yet, but I got it while I was on set just in case there's something that I wanted to get for background sound, which is extremely important too. So for this example, I just want to right click on this audio clip, come to modify, and look at my audio channels. And here under audio channels, you can see you can choose from stereo, mono is stereo, and 5.1. So this can get kind of confusing because it all depends on the external recorder you're using or the way you have it set up in your camera. For this case, I was using a Zoom H4n set to stereo. Now, when I bring this clip down on my timeline as stereo, you can see when I start playing it, I only have the left audio channel here. So, this is not a big deal because if I know what I'm doing up front, I can come back to this and change it to mono if I want to just play this as mono. And when I bring that back down this time, you can see I have both levels this time, left and right. They're mono, but I have both left and right. Now, what if, let me bring that back down for an instance. The other option is right and click audio channel and mono is stereo. And when I do this, once again, I have my left and right, but it's still mono. So what the problem here is if you start editing and you don't get these settings right, when you come back and you go to modify audio channels, these are all grayed out. You can't change it if your clip is in any one of these sequences. This is a huge pet peeve of mine. If anybody knows any workarounds that they've run across, please share with the rest of the people. But this is just one of those hassles of Premiere that you have to get used to for now until they fix this. So what I do is normally I'll keep this a defaulted stereo. And when this is down here, since this is just this one track and it's only playing the left channel, so when I come up here, these are my favorites. And I've set up a couple favorites here for So when I come up here, I have a few favorites set, and one is for fill left and one is for fill right. So when I drag this on here, since it was my left channel, I drag the fill left on. That's going to fill my left channel to my right channel. And that's a really handy thing because you're going to get into a situation while you're editing audio where it's, the left or the right channel, and you need to be able to sync both of them. And this is the fastest way that I found online and from experience based off a lot of editing in Premiere on how to fix this issue for now. So once that's set up, you can go ahead and start to modify your audio controls here. So the first thing you can do is come in and check your audio gain. And there's different ways you can adjust these peaks and normalizing them. The easiest thing for me is just to come in and set manual value. So bring it up to 5. Now you don't want your audio to ever peak, but anything above around -6 to -12 dB is normally where you want to start actually cutting your audio. And that way as you start adding more things, you want to keep it around that range level. How my makeup artist didn't have even. So now that we have that sorted out, I'm going to go through a simple workflow for syncing the audio, because last week I already had that pre-synced for you. And I'm going to go through two things. I'm going to go through how to do it in Pluralize very briefly, because not everybody has Pluralize, and there's plenty of Pluralize tutorials out there for Premiere and Final Cut. But I'm also going to show a quick manual syncing method, and that way you can manually sync your audio pretty easily, and that's something you have to run into in these DSLRs with DSLR filmmaking. I've been shooting a lot of f3 lately, and it's just a dream come through to be able to jack XLR ports into that camera and just be able to come back and edit it with no issues. But when you're dealing with DSLRs and dealing with long interviews and things like that, I highly recommend you invest in something like Pluralize, which syncs the clips up for you. But if not, we're also going to cover how to do it yourself. So what you want to do is you want to drag all of your media onto the timeline. So right here I have my interviews.
Black button-down shirt, black pants.
And this is the interview with the audio from the 5D Mark II. And then
You're never going to get any worse than you could be.
and that is the Zoom H4n, and you can see I'm only synced on one channel. I keep it this way to start, and then what I'll actually do is after it's all done, I'll come back and add my fill lefts. After Pluralize, I'll let it process first, and then I'll come back and add it later. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. And so very simply, you put these down, you put your audio in one and your audio 2 here, which is the two syncs. And you come up here, you go to File, Export, Final Cut Pro XML, going to save your project, and once again going back to file management, you always come back under your project, and under Premiere, and then create a folder for Pluralize under your projects, Premiere, Pluralize, and go ahead and save that out. Once you save that XML, all you have to do is come into the Pluralize as a standalone application. You open the XML, you select your sequence that you want, you select up what settings you want here, and you go ahead and execute that. That's going to basically generate another XML file. And what you're going to do is you take that XML file that you find in here, you're going to import it back into Premiere, and you're going to be set to open up that sequence with the new XML file, and it's going to look just like this, but everything's synced up. So that's just a quick, rough, dry way to do it. It's very self-explanatory. There's lots of instructions online, so I don't want to waste a lot of time talking about it. But I do want to talk about if you have to, and I do this a lot of times, I'll just manually end up syncing something because it's sometimes a lot faster, especially if using clapboards or at least a clap. And when you're actually clapping in front of a shot, don't just clap in front of the camera, and make sure that you can audibly hear it. I see a lot of people on set make those simple mistakes. I see a lot of people on set just blow those things off. So as an editor, when you get this stuff back, and it's DSLR stuff and they didn't sync it, they didn't actually do those things, you'll realize why that's so painful. So best practices if you are shooting is to always do clapboard, or at least a hand clap prior to each edit, even if you have syncing software. So what I'm going to do here is you just kind of have to merge up something that they're saying. So you want to listen. Actually, what I'm going to do, since I'm manually doing this, is I want to go ahead and set this right. So I'm going to put my fill left on here, and I'm going to bring up my audio gain.
All right, I should do this. All right. Hey guys.
So we have a hey guys there. What I'm just going to do is bring up my trim edit here until when he says hey guys.
Hey guys, James Douglas.
So I'm going to come back onto that audio.
Hey guys, James
there
Douglas.
We go. And then I'm going to mute this.
Hey guys.
And listen to where he says.
Hey guys.
So right about here, I'm going to bring that in. And that's going to get me pretty close. So I'm just going to re-extend these two out, and what I want to do is bring them both on and listen.
We're here in the downtown studio. Hey guys, James Douglas.
And that sounds like it's pretty synced, but you can always use the Alt, left and right arrows to nudge, and you can get real close in here and nudge back and
We're here in my
forth.
downtown studio.
You'll see when you're off.
Photography, I think. The test.
and you can hear that echo. So you just bring that back. And here's a good illustration right in here, where you'll see those audio, you'll see it line up almost perfectly. You can see that right in here too. So that's off, that's off. That looks like it's about on.
Now it's, getting around and doing some more work, getting a little bit more out there.
At that point, it sounds good. All I have to do is Alt-click on my Audio 1 track. I can go ahead and delete that. And what I want to do here is use my B to hit the blade key, and I can simply drag this up to the top so they're together, select them both, right click, and link. And you see it puts an underline there between both clips, and that means they're linked. So now I can drag these clips around, and I have a full linked clip now with my correct audio. So it's a little bit of a workaround, but I will tell you there's a lot of instances where it's just a lot easier to do it this way. I did one music video that I edited. I had, I think, about 10 to 15 different takes and a bunch of different audio tracks, and I manually synced most of that stuff up because we clapboarded it, and it was just easier that way to alt-click back and forth on my track. And you can definitely see that's going to save you a lot of time when you do those methods. So we covered fill left and right command, we covered alt left and right, we covered our audio gain, and the manual overview of syncing your audio and also using the automatic pluralized syncing. So now what I want to do is take the interview that we shot last, or we started to edit down last week, and we are going to take this one step further. So I went ahead, since we last talked, and cut these down to different groups, and they really need cleaned up. So, when I'm curious to hear how everybody's came out and how you guys kind of merged things around, but I was able to definitely take certain sections and kind of fit them to certain parts and make a couple subsections. So these are not final, but they're a good start of where we're going to start to integrate our audio later in this class and really fine-tune how this is all going to sound. But let's actually go ahead and perfect one section here. So this is all synced. My audio gain is looking good, right around -6, a little bit higher. So I can always tweak this by right-clicking and coming into audio gain. If I want to select multiple, I can do that too, and bring this down to maybe 8.
And we're here, and
and that's going to change the audio gain on all of them. You can just double check that.
We're here in my downtown studio, photographing a bunch of models, some stylists, and some makeup artists, and we're here, and we're having a great time in the studio and just doing some good work.
So that's the first section. This is going to be kind of the opener that's going to fit in when the music starts to come in. Let's listen to it one more time.
Hey guys, I'm James Douglas. We're here in my downtown studio, photographing a bunch of models, some stylists, and some makeup artists, and we're here, and we're having a great time in the studio and just doing some good work.
Okay, so you can see there's several cuts in here, and I'm going to cover this with B-roll, obviously, maybe give him a quick introduction in here for the face, and then I'm going to cut this away. But we want to fine-tune this, and the first thing we're going to do is I can hit the S and the A key to go back between these edits, and we're going to go into trim mode. So trim mode I have programmed for the H key. Kind of, I think that's what came from Avid, because it kind of looks like the left and the right on the H. That's how I remember it. And I just want to be able to come into the left and right of this trim module. So when I'm clicking on this side, I'm seeing my left side. When I'm clicking this side, I'm going to sync to this side. So let's just play this back.
Downtown studio, photographing.
So really all I have to do is come back and do my plus and minus keys. Now, I have keyboard shortcuts. The M and the left caret, right caret, and question mark are my different -5, +5, -1, +1. And so what I can fine tune is if I click in the center, I'm basically doing a ruling edit and I'm moving back and forth by 1 frame between that edit. If I click on the left, I'm moving back and forth just on the left, and I click on the right, back and forth 1 frame on the right, and I could do 5 frames left and right too if I wanted to. So this is fine-tuning that edit point. So
downtown studio, photographing.
So sometimes I just use the plus keys too.
Downtown studio, photographing. Downtown studio, photographing.
So that's sounding all right. Now, just if you're curious from the first class when we covered how to change those settings, if you go to preference in general, you have a pre-roll and a post-roll. So if I make this 5 seconds and 5 seconds, and I come back into H, it's going to play 5 seconds before the cut.
Here in my downtown studio, photographing.
And 5 seconds after.
Hey guys, I'm James Douglas. We're here in my downtown studio, photographing.
So I like to keep it at a second before and after. It just helps me out that way.
Downtown studio, photographing.
And what we're going to do is, since we're on this cut, I always like to set cross dissolves. And I talked about this before. I don't actually ever use keyframes. I told you how to disable them. I despise keyframes for anything in Premiere on the timeline because it's something you're just going to drag around and move. So the simple thing to do is actually come up to your constant power, which is one of my favorites, and you can set selected as default transition. So once again, coming under preferences general, I can set my default audio transition, which is currently 0.25 seconds, so very short. And by doing that, when I drag this down onto my clip, it's going to be 0.25 seconds. To double check that, I can double click on it and see it there on the top. Now when I play this back, it just smooths out that audio. So let me take it off.
Downtown studio, photographing.
And I'm very, very picky about having cross dissolves on almost everything, even if they're only a frame or 2 long. They really help smooth these
studio,
out.
Photographing. Downtown studio, photographing.
So that's still not perfect yet. Oops. The other thing you can do in here is hit your A and S key to go back between the different cuts.
Downtown studio, photographing. Downtown studio, photograph. Downtown studio, photographing. Downtown studio, photographing.
And this is where things get very repetitive. Now, that one's sounding better. I'm going to move on to the next one.
A bunch of models, some photographing, a bunch of.
So there's a big break in there. Let's go ahead and cut some of that out here on this side.
Photographing a bunch of models. Photographing a bunch of models. Photographing a bunch of.
And then there's some gap in the beginning of this one.
Photographing a bunch of models. Photographing a bunch of models.
All right. And to make things quicker, I'm going to show you another way to add a cross dissolve. I set up my keyboard shortcut for Apple Shift D sets a video cross dissolve, or video default transition, whatever you set up here. Apple D sets my audio, and it's automatically put on there. So that's one way.
A bunch of models. Photographing a bunch of models, some stylists and some makeup artists.
So one thing that I like to sometimes do, because things get distracting with the videos, I'll just turn the video off and listen.
Photographing a bunch of models, some stylists and some makeup artists, and we're here and we're having a great time in the studio and just doing some good work.
And so I'll cut the end off of there and see the beginning here. You can see where it starts. That's why I always have my waveforms down there.
Hey guys, I'm James Douglas. We're here in my downtown studio photographing a bunch of models, some stylists and some makeup artists, and we're here and we're having a great time in the studio and just doing some good work.
All right, so that's sounding better. The last thing I want to show you, I'm actually going to delete these cross dissolves to show you one more technique. And if I select all these clips here, I can actually come under my sequence and I want to apply default transitions to selection. Now, if I do that and I have my video selected, it's going to obviously put cross dissolves on all the top. So what I want to do is holding down Alt first, then you drag across just your audio, come back up to sequence, and apply default transition selection. And if you have 100 clips, you can see why that's beneficial. Now, it doesn't add it to the beginning and end, but that's fine. You can do that later, or for this case, we'll add those later once we get more sound in there.
On studio, photographing a bunch of models, some stylists, and some makeup artists, and we're here and we're having a great time in the studio and just doing some good work.
So that's sounding pretty good for this one section. Obviously, I went pretty slow there for the class purposes, but you can see how you can quickly go through these. Now, what I'm going to do is one more very quickly for everybody, just kind of going at a faster speed so you can kind of get a feel. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to come up to sequence, apply default transition selection.
Lens for many reasons. There's a lot of misconceptions.
So I'm going to hit H key. I'm going to try and fine tune this.
For many reasons. There's a lot of for many reasons. There's a lot for many reasons. There's a lot of misconception. Everybody. I love this lens for many reasons. There's a lot of misconception.
So this one's a little complicated. I want to make sure I might bring this cross dissolve in a tiny bit more to even that out.
For many reasons. There's a lot of misconception. Everybody. For many reasons. There's a lot of misconception. For many reasons. There's a lot of misconception. For many reasons. There's a lot of misconception. Everybody.
So the thing is you will spend a lot of time perfecting this, and it's funny how one small frame off can really either make or break some of these cross dissolves and some of these transitions when you're really chopping an edit up, when you're chopping an interview apart, because you want to take out the ands and the likes and the ums and all those things to try and make them sound more professional if possible.
1.2. This lens is 1.2. This lens is 1.2. This lens.
So you can see that one adjustment made a big difference.
This lens.
So let me come back so you can hear again.
1.2. This lens.
So you heard that little pop in there at the end?
1.2. This lens.
If I do one frame back,
1.2. This lens.
It gets rid of it.
1.2. This lens. Lens is not at 1.2. This lens is so sharp at f8.
So that's getting the audio a little bit more fine-tuned. I kind of want to talk about a couple of the audio cross dissolves you can use at the ends of things. So what I did right there is constant power, which puts the transition as a default. That's what I use for all my main cross dissolves. If you use something like exponential fade, let me just zoom in here and extend this.
It's just.
It very gradually dissolves out.
F8 and F5.
So you can see right here, the audio is already gone. Let's change that to a constant power.
At F8 and F5, it's just beautiful.
So it's a lot more of a bell curve as it curves out down this way versus a straight kind of underneath curve that curves this way with the exponential. So exponential kind of goes like this, constant power kind of goes like this. So those are good things to know, like, because normally you might be used to using keyframes, and if you want to kind of mirror those effects, use these cross dissolves. Because once you're all said and done and you start merging these clips together, all you have to do is delete these things and it's gone, or you add another one. You're not in here fiddling with all these little ups and downs and all those different keyframes. For instance, say I want to bring audio down. I'm going to show you that in a second as I move into bringing my music in, so you can see how I can actually make dissolve points in my clips. So we're going to move on to talk a little bit about the music here. And I found about 3 songs that I went and gave to James and let him kind of decide, what his kind of feel for things were. I kind of wanted to give it a kind of fashion feel or an upbeat feel as people are having fun. He talks about having fun. And so there's a really important thing to get a good creative feel and good creative mood out of your piece. And that's why I think audio is so important, and that's why I always try and pick my audio up front to match the mood that I want, and then I can cut to the audio. So what I normally would do is pick one of these songs. So let's just try this one. And once again, this is all high quality music that you can actually use royalty free. So what I would do is come under my B-roll. And I'm just going to kind of start, let me bump this down a little bit just because of the recording. My playback resolution down to 1/4. You just kind of get a feel for some of the B-roll, and you see how it's going to fit. And this is a nice instrumental piece, but I've actually and this is another instrumental piece, and I like both of these a lot, but I think we kind of went with something a little bit more upbeat and a little bit more of a vocals to it. So once again, like I talked about, we want to have this kind of intro feel where people are getting ready, intercut with James talking about the event, and then kind of let the music at the end pick up and go to everybody filming and shooting and having fun and actually modeling, and put some of the actual photos in there, do some effects, and put that all together with the conclusion. So we want to have something that kind of has a pacing. So we picked out this song, which has a nice upbeat sound. At the beginning, there's some nice drums and vocals that we can put some titles to and kind of dissolve this down and let James speak. And then later it picks up and has some audio, has some nice vocals in there. So what we're gonna do is, let me come under this download here, and media management, once again, do not save these songs to your desktop, which is a common mistake. Go ahead and come under your model shoot, come under your music folder, and go ahead and save whatever file you pick. There's also been some good recommendations on the forums that you can check out from other members about some of the royalty-free sites they found. But this is something that you definitely want to do legitimately. You don't want to just find some music that's copyrighted and then put in, do all this hard work, and then come back having to do a re-edit for your client because you didn't go through the right procedures. So you can read all the regulations on Audio Jungle to make sure you're in policy, but I found some really, really good gems in there. So the one thing that that you don't want to come in a trap on when you're talking about music is you don't want to edit with MP3s. So if I come into this music, I open up the zip file. We have a WAV and an MP3. So luckily they already gave us the WAV file. But let's say it was only an MP3, or you only have an MP3 to work with. Very easily, I can open this in iTunes. And all I have to do is right-click on it and create WAV version. And it only takes a few seconds. And then right-click on that new WAV version of it. In order to do this in iTunes, you actually come under your preferences. And when you come under your advanced, in iTunes, you just come under General, and then you go into Import Settings, and you set it to WAV Encoder. So that way it automatically encodes a WAV file for you. And now you want to right-click on that, and go to Show in Finder. And it's going to do it to your music folder. So once again, don't just import this into Premiere. Go ahead and drag it back, and bring it into Current Projects, James Model Shoot, Music. Drag it in, and now we can go ahead and drag that in to Premiere. Once that comes in, the first thing we want to do is organize it under our music folder. Come back to our main edit and go ahead and drag this file in. And so what you want to do is try and put this flush up to the side so you can see our final video will end at about 2 minutes and 46 seconds. So we got to fill this song. So we're kind of creating sort of a music video kind of feel to it. what I'm going to do is take my audio 1 and mute it. So this little beat at the beginning is going to be where we have some titles. And when the titles come out, I'm going to start to put some of these audio in here. So you can't even hear James right now. So how do I do this without having to manually come in here during this change and add keyframes? Well, all I do is come to my audio track and go ahead and hit my C key for my blade tool and go ahead and make a cut there. And now I can go ahead and put a constant power between these two. I can go ahead and add however long I want. And then this side here, I'm going to set another cut and another constant power. Oops, make sure you put it in between the two cuts. And all I have to do is right click in the middle here, come to audio gain, and then bring my audio gain way down to something like -15 normally is what you do with the interviews.
We're here in my downtown studio. Hey guys, James Douglas.
And so to make that nice and smooth,
hey guys, James Douglas. We're here in my downtown studio photographing a bunch of models, some stylists, and some...
That's too low. So I'm going to bring this back up a little bit to -12 per se.
We're here in my downtown studio photographing a bunch of models, some stylists, and some makeup artists, and we're here and we're having a great time in the studio doing some good work.
And go ahead and do a nice slow dissolve back out of this into your video.
Good work. Hey guys, James Douglas.
And you can also experiment with adding exponential fades, which we talked about earlier, and you can just drag it right over.
Hey guys, James Douglas.
And normally constant powers for these types of things work better. There's certain times where some will work better than the other.
James Douglas.
I'm going to bring these back here, maybe start fading that a little bit sooner.
Hey guys, James Douglas. We're here in my downtown studio photographing a bunch of...
And I want to bring my audio up here just a little bit more.
models, some stylists, and some makeup artists, and we're here and we're having a great time in the studio and doing some good work.
You see we're peaking there, so I want to bring this audio gain here down to -3 or so. Let the music fade, and I'm going to come back and out of this song until I have everything kind of right and a good feel. And by the time you're done with this and working with this edit, because you already have your interviews, and go ahead and pick out a song that you kind of think works, once you're done, you make sure your video's off, and this should all flow. All of the sound bites, the audio, just think about it like I talked about last week as a podcast. And as long as you do that, once you're all said and done, you should have a really good standalone audio track. And then the power of adding in the B-roll where it fits is going to really bring it all together. Next week we're going to go over my time-lapse workflows from a lot of the projects I've shot, and I think you guys will really enjoy that class. So thanks so much. I look forward to all of your questions and feedback in the forums, and let me know if you need any help.